When Remington introduced their R51, I was somewhat intrigued. It had some really different look to it. I like that. I like when companies kind of step outside the box. They took it from the original Remington R51, and a lot of the design cues for this pistol are the same, but they've upgraded it to the 21st century. Of course, after it was introduced, they were plagued with problems. There was a lot of things that were going wrong, and to the point that they had to just have a full recall on the Generation 1 pistols. After quite a bit of extensive work, and it was over a year, they reintroduced the Gen 2 model. And this is one of the Gen 2s, but not only is it a Gen 2, it's a very late model production Gen 2. And so Gunbuyer.com got in touch with me and asked if I'd be willing to review one because they had quite a few in stock. I took it down to the range. We shot 600 rounds through it. I had one malfunction. And that was on the initial review, which I'll have it annotated right here above. The one thing that always bothered me was, is this just a fluke? And so I called Remington, their tech support, and I said, I have an R51, I know that they've had a lot of problems, but mine has been really spot on, except for that one malfunction. I said, what are you guys doing to the new Gen 2s? And he said, the one thing they're doing, and of course he didn't know who I was when I called, but he said the one big thing they're doing is they've revamped the magazines, they're tweaking the magazines to really be optimal in feeding in this handgun. And sure enough, I mean, it was just exceptional. I wasn't really satisfied with that. And so I got online, I found another R51 and decided to do some testing. Now I wanted to make sure this was a pretty late production piece, and I marked the magazines in case we had any kind of issues, and then we took the firearm out to the range. We shot over 500 rounds of Full Metal Jacket, and then Gunbuyer.com, after this review, sent me 500 rounds of Hornady Critical Defense, and we shot 500 rounds of it. So we're going to take a look at some of the findings that we had with both of these pistols. I'll tell you, the original R51 has yet to have any problems, except for that one malfunction. And while there were a few issues with the new one, they're definitely magazine related. Now again, we had 600 rounds through the original R51 Gen 2 with just one malfunction. With the new model, we did have initially some issues. And I'm going to show this at the range, some of the things that were going on. And then I'm going to explain it because I think there's some things that we need to learn from the way this is shot. So we didn't really get great video of what it was showing exactly, but here you can kind of get a demonstration. Get my ears in. Flat shooting, isn't it?
It is, very flat.
To me. It's not me this time, okay? Maybe it is.
All the way back. One problem that we did have was sometimes the slide would be cocked back just a touch, and we'd pop it and it would go right into battery. And again, that was the initial 100 rounds. After that, we had no problems.
Well, we did it. We had our first malfunction.
One thing we noticed with inserting a magazine, especially at first, we had a little issue bringing it back. It wouldn't quite load the round. But it's doing it now. But, Robbie, give me that other magazine. One of the other magazines, though, we've had some issues. It wants to come back, but not quite all the way. And we definitely think it's a mag issue.
Yeah.
but it seems to be nose diving just a little bit into the front of that magazine. You can see right here, it's just wanting to bind up right there at the front. Beautiful. Both handguns have been safety checked. And from what I understand, Remington says that it has a 100-round break-in period. Now, you know, take that as you will. I know most guns that I get nowadays, they function right out of the box. Now, one of the problems is that if this round gets pushed, once it's down and it gets pushed in any way, what it does is it rides right here under this lip. It's a very short distance. And so once it comes back to the back of the magazine, it'll pop out. And what's going on is a lot of times this is being fired, and somehow, especially, you know, with certain type rounds, you can see it just nosedives right there into the front of this lip. Now, I've thought about modifying that lip, and we're going to take a look at that and maybe see if that's a viable option or if that's really what controls the gun, you know, what really makes it feed. But obviously, it's just collapsing right there. Now, one of the things, though, is after that second round, typically, it won't catch because the spring tension is not as great, and it seems to feed reliably after that. You can see. Just pops right out. It's typically that second round, and some of them even the first round. If this gets bumped at all forward, it's going to push up. Now, the great thing is this follower has this lip, and this is new on the Gen 2. And that would help it to feed upward a little bit. It's this lip is what's catching it. And really, we had that happen just a few times. Once, and that was initially when we first started shooting this. I would say that we had all of our issues with the first 100 rounds. After that, we had no malfunctions with this pistol. Except for one time when we were at the range, down here at the house, I was shooting it. And I was changing magazines out, and I had it one time just to hang up a little bit. I racked it, and it went right back to shooting. Now here on the original R51, I'm going to use the magazines that we had in the second R51. Yep, I can still feel just a little bit of resistance. Let's try some of the ones that came with it. Here's one of the magazines we have marked for the first one. Yeah, that is much smoother, and I've noticed that quite a bit. The biggest thing is the magazines, honestly, with the functionality of these pistols. Now, Remington did say that some of the magazines that they were having manufactured had overpowered springs, and that would definitely cause the issues that we were talking about. And so on those magazines, and I really think the one with the two-tone, the second gun that we got, those magazines were just oversprung. And so that was causing some of the malfunctions. Because, guys, to be honest, after that, you know, all these problems started going away. So that may be really the biggest part of the problem. Now, this magazine is from the original R51, and this was the one that functioned very well. This is from the second R51. One of the things that the Remington customer service said that if you load these magazines, one should be easier than the other. And so we're going to go ahead and load and just see how these are. One thing that they actually recommended was cutting off one of the springs just to see if it had less tension. Now that was really very easy to load. That's the original. It's definitely a little more tension than the first one. Not too hard to load, but definitely there's more spring tension on the second magazine. So that could have been part of the problem. And I didn't really notice it when we initially loaded this one at the range. So now that we've put so many rounds through these magazines, they may have already worked themselves down. While the bolt faces are the same, and of course these are both Gen 2 and they're pretty much updated, the Gen 1 did not have this lip on it. And so I think this was made to be able to facilitate making a positive contact on those rounds. I want to thank Fiocchi for sponsoring the ammo. We're going to be shooting some 115 grain full metal jacket. But also we're going to be shooting some Hornady Critical Defense. And I've got this from Gunbuyer.com. They sent this along to test. The original R51 was sent by Gunbuyer.com. The second R51 I picked up at a local gun shop. Because, again, we just wanted to test these out and really see what the problems were. Now we're going to test out some of the critical defense, and these are jacketed hollow points, and these should feed. I mean, they're closed in, but just going to test it out. These are rated for plus P, so we should be good. Try another magazine. But the fact remains, guys, that we now have about 1,000 rounds through this pistol, and we have had one malfunction. And with the new R51, we've shot about 300 rounds through here the first range day, and then the second range day we shot probably about 400 rounds of the hollow points and a couple of hundred rounds of just regular full metal jacket. And we did shoot some hollow points out of the original R51. And so, you know, again, while we were down at the regular range, we did not have any issues except for one. Now, one thing that I want to point out when you're reinserting your slide stop, this spring needs to catch under your slide stop. And you'll notice there's a small little shelf that this spring needs to ride under. If you do not get this under the spring, it will cause malfunctions. So when you insert your slide stop, you just need to make sure that that little lip fits under that spring. Now for me, to make sure, I've taken a small little scribe and I just lifted the spring up and then popped it into place. And one way to easily tell if that works is when you pull the slide back, if it does not release. If it catches the slide back, then you know you don't have it inserted correctly. And guys, the breakdown of this handgun is pretty complicated, and you can check out the initial review that we did to watch. So what are you thinking?
It's got a good trigger. It's got a real good trigger. Like the beaver tail grip safety on it. It works well. It's easy to activate. Somebody like me with big hands, it's hard for me to shoot the little gun. It bites me in the web of my hand pretty good with the slide. But for someone with smaller hands that doesn't high grip the gun as much, it's a good little gun. And we've put 250 rounds through it today.
I think it's a soft shooting gun for a
is.
single stack 9mm.
It is, absolutely, absolutely. It almost kind of reminds me of the Hudson with the recoil impulse.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm glad that Remington's done some improvements. So. Now, as far as my thoughts on the R51, you know, the Gen 2 late model, this one has been just fantastic, except for one malfunction, and that was with the first 600 rounds. We've shot about 400 rounds since then. So this gun has about 1,000 rounds through it with one malfunction. When it comes to the second R51, which was, the magazines seemed to be a little bit of the issue. Anytime we fed the original magazines in this handgun, it worked. It was only with the magazines that came with this gun. We had some initial problems, but after that it really smoothed out to the point to where on our second range day with this handgun, we only had that one malfunction, and it was really slight. In fact, I just re-racked the slide and it went into battery. So I think there is a break-in period with these handguns, no doubt. You know, with this one we didn't have that problem, but with the magazines that are not quite up to par, I think they'll work their way out sooner than later. But overall, I really feel that Remington is moving these in the right direction, and they are becoming reliable. Now, will that overcome all the problems and the bad press that these have had? You know, that remains to be seen, but it's definitely a hurdle that Remington's going to have to overcome. Now, one thing about the R51, they do have a lot of aftermarket support. Here we have some hidden hybrid holsters, really nice inside the waistband, great for appendix carry. And so this is just a good choice. And then we have, you know, the more of the hybrid type holster that is just really gives you a lot of support. But these are just excellent holsters. I just want to kind of show these off. I just got these in. The guys from Hybrid Holster got in touch with me and asked about the Remington R51 after seeing my initial review. And so really, especially this first one. This one has, again, been just super reliable. One malfunction now out of between 900 and 1,000 rounds. And, you know, it's a good solid gun. This one, honestly, I believe that it's just a magazine. Now here we have one of the Crimson Trace lasers. It just fits to the trigger guard, so not having an accessory rail is fine, especially with something like this. But you just grip it, you can see the laser coming on, and, you know, Crimson Trace makes some pretty cool systems that just integrate into the pistol. You know, there's a lot of aftermarket support for these guns. And guys, I'll tell you, if they can get that magazine figured out, this is a really neat little, very flat handgun, very thin. And we're going to continue to shoot these and continue to find out really how reliable these are. Because honestly, guys, if you're going to depend on something for self-defense, it needs to be very uber reliable. Now, down in the comments below, if you've had an R51, especially the Gen 2, leave your experience down below in the description. One of the things on the original R51 that I did the review on, there was a lot of positive comments that far outweighed the negative, but there were negative. But it seemed like the ones that were negative were mainly guys that had never even shot an R51 or didn't own one. You know, guys, I know there's a lot of reviews out there with, you know, showing problems. But if, you know, the company has re-released the Gen 2, if they're fixing the magazines, and if they're getting them to work, you know, that is something that we need to document as well. Is it a great gun? Yes. The trigger is exceptional. The recoil management on this gun, I mean, it shoots flat. It feels great in the hand, and I really hope that Remington really figures it out, that, you know, we can get these magazines that we need and be able to really have a lot of confidence in these handguns. But, you know, guys, when it comes to firearms, of course, a lot of times we buy them and we just put them back. We take them out to the range and enjoy them. And to me, at this point right now, that's what the R51 is going to be designated for. And I really appreciate Hidden Hybrid Holsters for sending the holsters and just kind of giving us more of a feel for it. You know, when you review a lot of guns, you need a lot of holsters. And also for sending the Crimson Trace laser, which I thought that was just a nice gesture on their part. This is not a negative review for sure, but definitely, you know, I'm a little cautious in saying go buy an R51. And yet, I'm optimistic. Again, I want to thank Gunbuyer.com for sending the original R51. I did purchase this handgun because I just wanted it to be completely separate and find out what, you know, our findings were, and the Hornady ammunition that Gunbuyer.com sent. And check them out, and it's really nice to be able to get different firearms to bring to you guys. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.
Oh yeah!
You gonna look back and see?
Okay, that's good. One of the things when I did the original review, yeah, I did. No, we don't care.
Then I started thinking, please don't
The
vape.
more organic and whatever it is, the better. I mean, if you're back here going, yeah.